now today we've got this call from the former Education Secretary, Justine Greening, admittedly a Remainer, you could say the usual suspects, but nevertheless the first former cabinet minister who has called for there to be a second referendum to resolve the deadlock on Brexit. Do you think she's right?
No, she's not right. There is a difficulty because the referendum on Brexit voted for a solution, gave an answer that a lot of the politicians don't want. And what we've always seen in the European Union is when there's a referendum and it votes the wrong way, eventually somebody starts trying to have another referendum to make sure the people get it right next time. I mean, if this proposal was accepted, I mean, the British people will become exasperated with their politicians. What is the point of having a referendum if you then conclude that they've got it wrong and they've got to vote again? I mean, this is an absolute nonsense. And as for the idea of having a 3-question referendum with 3 options on the ballot paper, I mean, how are we going to interpret what the result means?
Would we not need, in that case, we would surely need to have a sort of French presidential-style runoff of the top 2, wouldn't we?
If there is a deadlock in British politics, it is usually resolved with a general election. And if Parliament is determined to block Brexit, Theresa May will have to take the decision back to the British people in the form of a general election. Because the last thing we need is another referendum extending all the business uncertainty, insulting the British people. They got it wrong last time because they're too old or too stupid, and we hear a lot of that. If you decide to have a referendum, you have to accept the decision. Otherwise, you've got no respect for democracy. Given that Parliament did accept the result initially, I mean, we know what's going on. They're trying to fatigue everybody into thinking it's just not worth trying to leave the European Union. And the European Commission are behind this campaign, which is why they have negotiated in the way that they have. Last week, Barnier, the chief negotiator, actually said, soon it'll be crystal clear that the best option for the United Kingdom, the best deal will be to stay in the European Union. That's what they want. They want to defeat this country.
Well, you said, look, you've got to respect the decision. I mean, the one person who's not respecting the decision is the Prime Minister, the Tory leader elected to respect the decision. Her entire, mandate was, as becoming Tory leader and in the last general election, such as he got her mandate, was that she would enact Brexit. Do you agree with David Davis's former Chief of Staff, Stuart Jackson, who accused Number 10 yesterday of a long-planned coup d'etat by the establishment?
I think there's something in that. There is no doubt that the advice the Prime Minister gets from officials reflects the vastly prevalent view amongst civil servants that the country has voted the wrong way and we shouldn't be leaving the EU. And they cannot see past all the bureaucratic and business interests which want to keep us in. They cannot see the opportunities and the freedom that is so important to the character of our country, which people voted to get back. They just don't get that. And the result is the Prime Minister has been besieged by very Remainery advice, as though leaving the EU is not an opportunity for a new future. It's a terrible car crash to try and put right. And I'm afraid that attitude permeates the Chequers proposals, which is why so many of us are very unhappy with them.
Well, there's a lot of talk from the Eurosceptics and Jacob Rees-Mogg and others has been about, changing the policy, not the leader. But yesterday, Jacob Rees-Mogg described her as a Remainer who has remained a Remainer. Is it possible for the Prime Minister now to deliver a meaningful Brexit that will please the majority, please Leave voters?
Well, because of the way the EU has negotiated and boxed us into this corner.
Well, they're entitled to negotiate hard. Good for them, I say.
Yes, well, they are. But because of their refusal to negotiate anything sensible, we just have to leave. And the WTO option looks increasingly attractive. First of all, if there's no deal at all, we wouldn't have to pay any money to the European Union, and we could spend the money on ameliorating any disruption that might arise, but at least we won't have to spend all that money. Secondly, we are in instant control of all our our regulation, our tariff schedules. We can move instantly to do that great trade deal that President Trump wants to do with us. We don't have to hang around in a transition or wait for years while some new complicated customs system beds down. It ends the uncertainty, which is what for everybody. And finally, if there is disruption, if the EU, for example, does block aircraft landing at the European airports, I mean, people will see what a vindictive and destructive organisation the EU has become. And that is exactly why people voted leave.
Certainly, that's the impression I've been getting of the EU, and I sort of them as friends. But if they don't want to be friends, that's entirely up to them. But the reality is, it's a total abject failure by the Tory Prime Minister to actually deliver a decent negotiation position. I've got to be saying, I'm thinking maybe I would have liked Donald Trump to be in charge of those negotiations if that would have worked. But Boris Johnson today has written an article in the Daily Telegraph, his first back. Interesting, he's chosen to get a nice big sum of money for his first major words since resigning, rather than making a speech to the House of Commons. Don't give it away for free, Boris, never. He says Britain must believe in itself after Brexit. He says he wants a more positive vision for leaving the EU. And he's talked about the lack of self-confidence in the current debate on the EU, whether we can do things for ourselves, and that we should rediscover the spirit of dynamism of the Victorian age, go back out to the world in a way that we had perhaps forgotten. Now, that all sounds wonderful. But it's not going to happen under Theresa May. Fingers, we all know that. Absolutely. For hands down, it's not going to happen. So how are you going to deliver that sort of Brexit under this Prime Minister?
People have constantly underestimated Theresa May. People thought, for example, that the meeting with President Obama was going to be a disaster, and she turned it into a triumph. A lot of people thought she wouldn't survive until now, and here she still is. And no doubt people are writing her death warrant as we speak, but I rather suspect she's going to carry on. She's got bags of guts, and guts in politics counts for a great deal. This Chequers proposal, I suspect, is the last throw of the dice of the establishment view that somehow you've got to find some middle way between leaving and staying in the European Union. It is highly likely that the European Union will reject this, because they will not divide the four freedoms, the freedom to trade goods from the freedom of movement and the freedom of capital and so on. And this deal offends their principles. And I think they will find it very difficult to swallow. And when they don't accept it, we must just say, look, right, we're leaving. Either you give us a sensible withdrawal agreement and we go to WTO terms, preferably on a zero tariff, because really, I mean, is the European Union mad? They want to put tariffs on goods from the United Kingdom when we've had zero tariffs for so many...
I've got to be honest with you, I wouldn't put it past them now.
Well, exactly. But I mean, OK, we'll stick tariffs on their imports into the UK, and we will raise an extra £19 billion a year. And we can use that money to cut business taxes, make ourselves more competitive until the EU sees sense. There won't be tariffs. This is all bluff, like the Northern Ireland stuff, a lot of bluff. And, you can push Margaret Thatcher, you can push Theresa May so far. And I think she will battle for this country.